we were jumping out with these 50-pound bags of beans with like Rambo knives, cutting them open, shaking them. And so it kind of slowed the people down where they had to like pick it up. But there was a point where we did that. We landed, there's nobody around, and we landed. Hundreds of people came out of the woodworks. We're like cutting open these beans, and the helicopter starts taking off without us because they're seeing like it's too dangerous. So I had to run and jump in the helicopter as it was off the ground with the Rambo knife as it took off.
Hey, what's up, Rejects? Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. My guest is Trevor Williams. Trevor has an amazing story, and he is also the creator of the Williams Key. He is currently an LA County firefighter, and I'm not going to go too in depth about everything this guy has done and what he's currently doing. I'm just going to bring him straight in and see what he has to say to the listeners. Trevor, how you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me on, Preston. It's a pleasure. Excited for today in our conversation.
Yeah, first off, thanks for coming on, man. I was telling you a little bit before the show that the first time I heard you speak was on the Tailboard Misfits podcast, and I've seen your content everywhere on social media with the Williams Key, and I know there's so much more that we're going to cover, but that's the first thing I want to tackle is the Williams Key. And can you talk about like where this idea came from, why you felt it needed to be made, and how you got it done, and where it's going right now?
Sure. Yeah. The Williams Key is a tool for gaining access to doors without doing any damage. And it's kind of what I'm known for right now. It just comes up in conversation with everybody, and that's what people want to talk to me about. So that's cool. There's other aspects of my life too, and we'll get into that. But Williams Key, put me on the map a little bit. So it started with me being a carpenter, and specifically commercial construction, installing doors. And the door carpenter thing is kind of a niche where you have a million specialty tools. You have your cart, and you just have like the problems you run into installing doors. It's like endless. And so I was always making tools for myself to kind of help me problem solve, and we'd get locked out of stuff, or we'd have a lock that didn't work, or we'd have to manipulate a door in some certain way. So I learned how to lock pick. I learned how locks worked really well, was installing hundreds of doors over the course of a couple years. And yeah, the Williams Key was just, it's like putting a couple known concepts together into one tool, where the handle, I should show your listeners what it looks like if somebody doesn't know, but it looks like this. It is, there we go. It's like a framing square, which was like the original, how the tool was made. Like I cut up a framing square, and it had the blade side over here, which reaches behind the strike of a lock, and it just toggles it, right? It pushes it out of the way. And because it's long, sometimes doors will have an anti-vandal plate in the way, and this can still reach behind there and grab it. So it's great for outward swinging doors. On the handle side, there's a shove knife, which is a common firefighter tool, but now it's built into this tool here as like a combo tool. And if you can visualize that strike or the slam latch or whatever you want to call it, and there's no plate in the way, it's even easier. You can just grab it with the hook side here. So as I mentioned earlier, outward swinging doors mostly. That's kind of the easiest way to use this tool. And then there's little rabbit ears here. Even for those guys who carry around a shove knife, might not know what this part is for. This is for piercing through the trim on a wood frame door that is inward swinging. And what you would do is you would line this up with where you think the strike is on that lock and pierce it through the frame to push that strike out of the way and open up an inward swinging door. So, like maybe a bathroom door inside a residential, maybe a bedroom door, those sorts of things. It's a much less common entry approach, but it is there if you need it. And it does a little bit of damage because now you're piercing through like that frame that's tacked on with those little nails. And so you might like scrape up some paint or whatever, but it's better than kicking in a door, breaking the frame, breaking the latch and stuff. Yeah, so that's kind of where I ended up. That's where I got my start to making tools, was just having to be creative as a carpenter and being around doors all day long. And so by the time I got on the job, I'm hired with LA County Fire Department out of West Hollywood, Firehouse 8. That city and that station is very dynamic with the types of apartments we get. We get high rise, we get commercial, we get residential, and it's a pretty busy city. So all day long we're running into different types of doors. Every day I see a new type of door, and my favorite thing, just because of who I am and what I'm known for now, is like sizing up a door and knowing like a couple of different ways to get into every single door. So yeah, that's fun for me. And when I first got hired, I was a boot on probation. I had a little wizard kit. It was my little tool bag of lock picks and wedges and like wood wedges, aluminum wedges, air wedges. And then I had my Williams key, which I didn't call it the Williams key at the time. It was just a tool I'd made. And J hooks for Panic hardware, and the list goes on and on. So I would get out and I'd pride myself on every call on like trying to be the first to the door and see if I could size it up and get into it before they found the Knox key or somebody inside opened up the door or whatnot, or worst case scenario, we force it, right? So that always hurt me because I knew I was better than having to force the door most of the time. There's a time and place for it, buildings on fire, people were screaming. Let's force the door. I love that too. Love irons, rotary saw when needed. But if we don't need to do damage and hurt that door, like that is my goal. Like save the property, right? So life, property, those are priorities for us, and then the environment. And so yeah, that's how it came to be. And before long, you're a boot. You're trying to be humble.
Ruffle feathers, yeah.
Yeah. So I try and do that. And the approach I took was like just being aggressive, go getter, but not like, hey, I got in there first or whatever. Like, I'm not trying to do that, right? But before long, people were seeing me do this every shift, and they're like, hey, man, you mind making me one of those stupid tools you carry around, and they can't give you a compliment, right? Like,
no.
But yeah, so I was like, yeah, it took me a while to make this, like a grinder and like cutting it up and getting my measurements right and stuff. So I was like, yeah, okay. So I tried to make a few more, and it was just time consuming, and like I was helping the guys out, but like no benefit to me really, other than like other guys have the tool now and we're being productive with it and getting in faster and maybe save a life or something on occasion. But word spread pretty quickly once those additional tools like started getting in people's hands and hit the field. So before long, I had like 20 guys asking me for one, and I was like, oh, okay. And you're the boot. You're trying to be like respectful to everybody and like make everybody happy and stuff. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna look into having these fabricated, and I might have to charge you. It's like this is coming out of my pocket now. So I think I had a small batch made of, I want to say 100, and those went pretty quick. And there was a guy at my station who had a laser engraver, and he was showing me like he's a lot smarter than I am and showed me how to use it. And I got the idea to name the tool and then I could do engravings on the other side of people's names, because everybody likes to have, their name in the fire service, so they take pride in it or they don't lose it. So I started getting the tools powder coated black, which made it easier to engrave on. Because on a stainless steel piece of metal, on an affordable engraver, it's not strong enough to penetrate, so it just bounces off the stainless steel, and it's hard to engrave. So I'm like, black. I like the color black anyway. A laser can penetrate that paint and engrave, and then cool. Now we have a product. We got Williams key. It's marketable. People want their name on it, and yeah, it just took off from there. I made an Instagram. I made a website, and yeah, a couple videos went viral. It was easy to get content because people like being Johnny on the spot and getting into doors, and then people would film it and send me videos, and I was learning stuff from other people because they would figure out ways to use the tool that I'd never even thought of, and they'd be like, "Hey, I got in this sliding window, check it out," and they'd send me a video, or, "Hey, I'm bending the tool and I'm making like a modified J hook for Panic Hardware, check it out." And yeah, so the content was great. The algorithms were loving it. Instagram was just taking off, and I ended up going through a couple different versions of the tool as I developed it. The first version was 12 gauge, which is pretty thick and a little bit more crude, where the edges were sharp. It wasn't quite as refined. So the next version, I went to 16 gauge, and that seemed to be like too thin. Like people were bending it too much, and people were like complaining, like, "Hey, I destroyed the tool. It got stuck in a door or whatever." And so before long, I switched to 14 gauge, which is kind of right in the middle of those two, like happy medium. And I've stuck with that ever since. I took the sharp edges out of it, rounded it up, started experimenting with different fabricators, different powder coaters, and eventually, once the sales got to be so much, I couldn't keep up with the engraving. I had 3 engravers going like around the clock, trying to just keep up with putting the logos on them. And out of my own house, like it was like not a good. It creates smoke. It's not healthy. So eventually, it cost me more, but we started screen printing on the logo. And that's like, I didn't do that. That was just part of the fabrication process, where let's see, I think it was like a water jet cut, and then a powder coat, and then a screen print, and then I would get the finished product. And if somebody wanted their name on it, we'd leave one side blank, and we could put a name on for an extra cost. And yeah, it's been growing ever since, and that kind of laid the foundation for me to be creative and come up with other tools. So like nobody wants to buy a wedge from Joe Schmo over here, but since I have like a trusted brand, they're like, "Oh, you also make a wedge, a Williams wedge? Yeah, I'll try that too." So I made glow in the dark wedges that are like, if you look behind me, you can see that skull in the middle of the logo, and it's like a keyhole. If you didn't get it, it's a keyhole that also looks like a skull, and we make a wedge that also kind of resembles that, and it glows in the dark. So guys lose wedges all the time, right? We're always leaving them on scene and stuff, but with it glowing and being like a high vis, one, you can see it in the dark if you've used it at night, and also like it stands out. So much less people are losing those now, so that's nice. And I started experimenting with 3D printers and molding and different types of resin and epoxies, and long process with those, but I think we have a pretty good product to where it's durable, it's not brittle, it doesn't break, and it's lightweight, and it glows really nice. So yeah, it laid the foundation for me to just be creative and run with that and start making more and more products. And it's been really fun. Like one more example was super simple. I send samples of these out with every tool. It's a door hanger, and it just like it's a notification that fire service was there. They made entry. You might not have been home. You come home and you see like footprints on your floor because we had to get in there and turn off a fire alarm or something. And if you didn't know, your fire alarm was going off, and we came and we disturbed your house, and then we left, and you come home, there's footprints. It's unsettling, right? You think you might have gotten broken into. So this is just a courtesy, like a really nice customer service device that we can just leave on every door and say like, yeah, we did damage. No, we didn't. Yeah, we were here. Here's what the issue was. You can call us if you want, or whatever. You can be as descriptive or vague as you want, but very simple idea. But again, because I have the platform now, I'm able to sell these, and departments will order these by the thousands with their logo on it, and it's like it's an easy sale, you know?
Yeah, I like the placard idea. I don't know where you came up with that, but if I'm a homeowner, I'd much rather have that hanging on my door while it's still intact than the front of my house completely blown out. Yeah, definitely a good tactic there. And it's crazy to think that this all started because, I mean, is it true that pretty much all carpenters have like a love and respect for wood in general?
Oh yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, there's lots of different types of carpenters. I like to do woodwork as well. But as a door carpenter, we're dealing with a lot of hollow metal doors, a lot of metal frames, metal hinges, metal locks, the occasional wood door, and we'll cut on those doors and stuff. But I'd imagine there's like some carpenters who deal very little with wood. But still, you gotta love like the craftsmanship of just working with your hands, working with wood, working with tools, making something out of nothing. Yeah, I think there's kind of two sides to it. I would say maybe the hobbyists get even more into it, right? Where they're like creating art, and or like you're really good at making tables and chairs, and you love it so much that it turns into a business. Versus like your general contractors who are working with wood, but like they're trying to frame and like make a house and stuff like that. You know, like I'm not sure those guys love it quite as much as
Yeah.
the guys who are making something beautiful, you know, out of their creativity.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was eating at you when guys are just busting doors in. You're like, oh no, like I hate to see that destroyed. You know, there's such better way to do it.
What I really don't like is when guys do it on purpose.
No.
Like they know we have the right to it. They know I'm there, and it's to the point now where I'm just like, hey, you get in that door however you want. I've provided you the knowledge and the tools, but if you want to get in out of spite, you know, to just try and get at me, like go for it, man. Like,
bro, I can't imagine you being I can't imagine you being a probie and having this skill set and having these tools. I mean, you did talk about how guys were like on the side asking you to make them a tool, but did they think you were some type of like professional burglar or something when they first met you?
No. I mean, I do have to explain that part. Like, why do you know how to do all this stuff? And you know, if you have a locksmith background or you make locks or you install locks, like, yeah, then it makes sense. But if I was always vague and be like, yeah, no, I don't know, I grew up knowing how to do this or whatever, like people would probably be suspicious. But
right,
that's another question that comes up a lot is like, you know, oh, burglars are gonna love your tool and stuff like that. And I always tell them like, burglars aren't trying to preserve property. A brick is cheaper, a hammer, a crowbar is cheaper. Like they're not looking to like go out of their way, buy a tool that's more expensive than a crowbar or a brick, and like nicely get into your house. You know,
mm-hmm.
if anything, they've known how to do this sort of thing much longer than I have, and I'm not teaching criminals anything.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure the fire service has been ripping off burglars for years.
Yeah, I think so. Like the Halligan, right?
Yeah.
I was found at like a
He
bank.
was in a bank. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I've got I got one of the original like Hugh
Ooh.
Halligans with his name on it and stuff. Like I like the history when it comes to these sorts of tools. And yeah, I think they took like a Kelly tool and a claw tool and combined them, and that's how the Halligan came to be. Just kind of like me, like I combined two different tools into one, and that became the Williams key.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask that, dude, because, Hugh Halligan made that tool, but rumor has it, or history states that the FDNY didn't buy his tool because it was a conflict of interest, right? He was an employee. Do you
Yeah,
have that issue with LA County?
I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've never tried to push it on my department. I know that it's like it can be difficult, like red tape and stuff, and I don't want to be the guy because there's guys who kind of figure it out and get through and still get their stuff sold to our department. And to me, like it's not about that. Like I just want guys to be better at their trade. I tell people like, hey, make your own tool if you want. Like you don't need to support me. I want you to be better. So um, if money's an issue, like just make it. If you want to save time and have a nice product, like yeah, buy one of mine. But individually, guys have like hundreds of guys have bought the tool for themselves, and they make great probie gifts and promotional gifts and that sort of thing. And I try and hook up our guys, specifically like the brothers on my department, brothers and sisters. Like if they want it, like I want to make it as easy as possible for them to get one. Because I've sold like I don't know, probably over 30,000 of these, and every major city in the U.S., like every major department, um, probably has one. Like there's whole departments who've purchased them, and like New York buys them all the time, and Boston and Chicago, and like big departments. So it's like it's out there, it's well known. There's other tools that are kind of similar that do similar things, but I think the quality of mine is like the best, and the brand like speaks for itself. So people keep coming back to me for these tools, and sometimes they'll lose them or they'll get stolen, which is why I recommend putting your name on it, at least getting that engraved, or write it yourself. But I also have a ton of distributors at this point. Like the Fire Store is a big one, probably my biggest one. And they push out a lot of keys, and I think I've got maybe 20, a little bit over 20 different distributors. Some are brick and mortar, most of them are online. And lately a lot of military contracts too. So I don't like those because you'll get people who are vendors for the military, and they have to like there's some law in place where it has to be fair. So they all get to go out and get bids from you, and I'm the only guy that can supply the tool, unless they're trying to get it from a distributor. But it's like you're gonna lose like a lot of profit if you go to a distributor instead of straight to the source. So I'll get hit up by like a ton of vendors for the same deal, and it's just like they have these long like application processes and stuff. So when I can, I try and pawn that off to a distributor and just give them a better deal and be like, hey, can you just take care of this for me? Like I'm not a big, unless it's like $1 million contract or something.
Right.
Like, I don't like wasting my time for like these small, like, hey, I need 10 keys, and then I'm spending all day like filling out applications to the 10 different people and stuff. So but when they don't have to go through that process, it's much easier. Like a lot of them have petty cash funds too. I've sold to 3 of the SEAL teams, and they just come and be like, hey, we want these, like we'll just pay you for them, and we're not going to go through our normal process.
Yeah, good on them for doing that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I know you have the solid piece key that you're just showing, and then you have the foldable. Mm-hmm. But I think I heard you talking on the TBM podcast that the solid piece is a little bit better versus the foldable.
Yeah.
As far as construction goes.
The folding version, this is it. It has a sliding handle here, and you want it back all the way before you like lock in that screw, that nut.
Mm.
And it's limited because that nut will get in the way if you're trying to do anything more than like slide behind an anti-vandal plate. There's a technique where diagonally, you hold the tip and you reach the entire key, the entire key through like the reveal in the door. So if you can see daylight, or the gap in the door, that's called your reveal. You can see daylight, you can reach this entire tool through and come up behind the latch and try and like toggle it that way. And diagonally, that gives you your largest distance of reach. So you cannot do that with the folding version. The solid version you can. And because there's a moving part, that would be a point of failure, potentially. So that's like your weakest link. Now, I don't get a lot of complaints with the folding version. Like, people love them. They are portable. Like, you can fold it up. And then we sell a Kydeck Molly holster for them.
Nice.
You see that in there. You can put it on your belt and stuff. And yeah, it's a cool little setup. But it is more expensive, and it's not a solid piece of metal. So a solid piece of metal is always going to be stronger.
Right. It's like the 3-pin style Halligan versus the solid piece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have points of failure there with every additional little piece you put
So
on.
what's your recommendation if people buy the solid piece? Because I imagine people would prefer that. How do you store it?
So for me, I store it in my toolbox, and then if I can see the door from the street as we're pulling up, I'll size it up real quick. I'll either grab it or I won't. If I can't see the door, I might bring in my whole toolbox because I don't know what I'm going to run into. Does your department do EMS?
Yes.
Okay, so ours is as well. And we have EMTs and we also have paramedics. Both of us carry an orange box. And I've seen guys magnet the key to the top. However, it fits better like inside if you can just like open it up and slide it in. So that's probably how I end up accessing the key the most. Is it's always in our orange boxes. And we do a lot of medical calls, right? So as we're going up, we always get stuck at the gate in the front for an apartment or whatnot, and have the box with me already. I'm like, all right, cool. Open it up, grab the key, get us in, and then that's it. So yeah, it is awkward to carry on your person. It's 12 inches long and like a 9-inch handle and stuff. So there's not a really good spot to like fit it in your pocket. Whereas the folding version, even if you don't get the case, you can kind of throw it in a pocket and maybe the tip will stick out a little bit or whatever, or you might have a big pocket and fits the whole thing. But yeah, tons of guys and girls carry it on the folding version, at least on their turnouts, like in their turnout somewhere or on their belt.
Yeah, trust me, firefighters will always find a way, right? Like I got guys in my department that carry, like the Raptor shears on their bunker gear belt and, have some stethoscope or something in their bunker pants, all this crazy stuff. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure the foldable one finds its way somewhere or something like that. But I personally carry a truck bag with forcible entry stuff too. So that's probably I like how you sizing up the door from the street if you can see it. And then if not, just bring the whole bag. And like you said before, it's called dependent, right? Like visible flames and smoke, you're probably not going to bring that. You're going to go force a door. But if you get a fire alarm or something like that, EMS nuisance call, then you can do it from there.
And like I said, I do love forcing doors too. Like that, it's fun, and I'll share a call if you don't mind.
Sure.
A couple of days ago, I got to force a door in a new way. I was riding. Normally, I'm assigned to the truck. I'm a truckie, but in this day, we were moving bodies around all day long, and I ended up on the engine. And we do more medical calls on the engine. So we get a call. I'm in Hollywood, right? So this call was on Sunset Boulevard, and it was, I think, a man down call or like a unconscious. So we get on scene, and the medics had already like sized up what was going on, and they're like, hey, this one's kind of weird. Like, we found a guy He's locked himself behind a gate. We're not sure if he's dead or alive. And he's leaning up against the gate. And they said, bring the rotary saw and the bolt cutters. And I was like, I'm going to grab the irons and the bolt cutters, but I don't want to use a rotary saw if there's like a dude, close to this gate. And I've almost always been able to utilize the irons with the same effectiveness as a rotary saw. So I grab that stuff, I get to him, and yeah, I see this guy, like you can like kind of peek through the crack and you see like his head and not responding to us, talking to him, and there's no lock on the outside. There's a gap in between the door. Everything's metal, and you can kind of see in, and you see like a link. And so I'm trying to cut it with the bolt cutters, and it's like I don't know, maybe it's case hardened, but the bolt cutters aren't cutting through. And I see like it's like a screw link, where you can like it's the link of a chain, but you can screw it together. But that's been damaged, so you can't unscrew it by hand. So I'm like, all right, cool. I think I can like maybe pry this link apart. And I bit onto it with the bolt cutters, and then I bent it really hard, and it pulled the link apart. And then I was able to like keep bending and bend the door too a little bit. Like there was a small vandal plate in the way. I bent that as well with the bolt cutters. And then I was able to like reach my hand around, undo the chain, pull the door, and like he starts to fall back, and I catch him, and he's like cold. I'm like, okay, yeah, this guy's been here a while. So yeah, it was just a kind of a new scenario for me where I had to be creative. Like it's not a traditional door or lock. Like the lock is missing. He's locked himself in with chains and stuff, and it's a dead body or even a live body. Like we don't want to be too forceful because we don't want to like have the saw slip and hit him, or that'd be a really bad scenario. So
yeah, especially with them expiring, there's got to be an investigation, and if you clip them with a rotary saw, you got to do a UCR, and now you're part of the investigation and all this stuff.
So
yeah, but I think that call, dude, I think that's a testament to what you've been saying, like who you are. You've been sizing up doors since you were a carpenter and on the job, and you've been trying to come up with creative ways to get through these without completely obliterating or damaging a door, and just being more respectful or mindful of the situation. And that story is pretty cool. You didn't even have to use, you weren't even promoting the Williams key at that point. You were just like, hey man, this is part of the job.
Yeah, no, and yeah, the right tool for the job. And people ask me like, does my key get into everything? I'm like, no, like it won't get past a deadbolt. Like there's lots of applications where it will not work. Like, and I make no claims to it like working on every door. It's not a miracle tool, but it is a tool for the toolbox, and that's why we have multiple tools. Like you don't see anybody just running around with one tool because there's so many different types of jobs to be done that there's no cure-all, right?
Yeah, no, it's great, man. I love the fact that I've got you on here now, and I had Adam Haywood, who's a saws and through the lot guy out here, and he works in Adams County, which is north of Denver, Colorado, and it's kind of a mixture of commercial and residential, and he started encountering those problems as well, like different commercial doors that were ultra reinforced, and he had to figure out different ways to do it, instead of just beating the crap out of it with saws and forced entry tools, man. And it's cool. Yeah, it's cool to have you on here, and Adam Haywood, just these different creative through the lot guys. It's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah, and I'm still learning. Like I learn stuff from guys all the time, and I'm at a big house. There's I guess it's relative to my department. It's big for my department, but there's 13 people per shift, so 39 people total, and it allows for like lots of overtimers to come through from other stations, and it's a respected house. It's like a very traditional old firehouse. We have fire poles, and a lot of different TV shows are filmed there and stuff, and it's Hollywood, so it gets a lot of attention, and it attracts people who know their job really well and like to train, and like to have a good time too. So there's always new people I'm meeting, and there's guys who've been on the job longer than I've been alive, rolling through there. And there's just so much knowledge to be to be learned, and sometimes it's like what not to do too. But I'm learning every day. So
Yeah, man. And how long you been on the job?
a little over 8 years,
8 years now.
at least with county, and then I did 4 years volunteer before that.
Okay. And are you so been on the job 8 years? We're going to get into your upbringing, but before we do that, I want to talk about your NGO. You're also doing something with that too, right? Like humanitarian.
Yeah. Um, okay, so if we talk about the NGO, it's going to transition us into a very long story. I don't know if you want to hit that right now or like shortly after the upbringing.
Well, let me explain it to the audience. The reason why I wanted to talk to you about the Williams key first is because the truckies and their attention span. So I
Makes
wanted to touch on the firefighter stuff and getting through the lock because that's kind of like present day stuff, and I didn't want it to take away from your story overall. So for the people that do know you, they know what's coming. All right. For the people that don't know you and your story, I'm just gonna let everybody know, like, please give this guy the time and respect to tell his story. It's one that you're not gonna want to just shut off in the middle of it. So make some time. And I'm just gonna hand it over to you, Trevor. You can start wherever you want to start with the story, and it's all yours.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, buckle up, everybody. No, I'll breeze through my childhood real quick. And then we can get into the meat and potatoes of another like pretty crazy reason why I'm a firefighter and just everything that has happened in my life and who I am today, like kind of all ties together. So, I grew up as a missionary. I was born in Virginia, but when I was 4, we moved to Africa, and I lived in, it was called Zaire at the time. It's the Democratic Republic of Congo now, and we were there during civil war, civil unrest. There was like, yeah, it was just really bad. And if you've seen Hotel Rwanda, that was happening um, during while I was there. Rwanda borders Zaire, so we had a lot of Rwandan friends. Um, Tutsi, Tutsis and Hutus were fighting, like big tribal fighting, on top of like president and military and all that sort of corruption going on at the same time. So eventually it got too dangerous for us in Zaire. We moved to South Africa and in Johannesburg. And South Africa was actually bad too. Like it seemed more first world country, like paved roads and restaurants and stuff like that, but it had a big like gang presence. So like we had panic button necklaces that we wear around even at home. The house that we moved into, we found out later, like the family before us had been massacred in their home, so that's why we got a house so fast.
Jeez.
It was just like a lot of like uncertainty while we were down there. So that was kind of my start to missionary work, and I was just a young kid, but I was exposed, to all this stuff at a young age. And we eventually, after South Africa, moved back to Zaire for a little bit. But it had already changed its name with the war that's going on. So I was in Africa about 4 years, came back to the States to reset, recoup, and lived in Connecticut for a little bit. And then when I was 12, we moved to Haiti. For your listeners who, most people know who Haiti is now, but back then, like nobody knew what Haiti was. They thought it was hell. They thought it was Hades, which is a different place. But now Haiti's been put on the map due to a few reasons we'll get into here shortly. Geographically, Haiti is attached to the Dominican Republic. So some people vacation to the Dominican Republic. It's much nicer than Haiti. Together they make up the island of Hispaniola, and they're about 565 miles south of Florida. So if you ever visit Florida, Miami, and whatnot, you might have experienced some Haitian culture. New York as well. A lot of Haitians travel to Miami and New York. But yeah, so we were in Haiti kind of doing the same thing. My dad was working for World Vision, which is a large nonprofit organization. We were Christian. So we weren't doing like church planning and preaching and that sort of thing. The World Vision does like 1,000 different things. So they do like education and teaching people how to plant crops and clean water projects and housing and sponsoring kids. So what my dad was doing was like emergency relief work. So just people in this very poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, had a lot of needs. So he ended up being the director of World Vision Haiti. And I was just like a teenager going to school during that time. So I got to learn the language a little bit, got to learn the culture. And that was my exposure to Haiti. And I was there for 3 years before, same thing, civil unrest, a lot of war, a lot of violence. And the people ousted their president. So they like kicked him out. I think he went to Africa to like escape, and there was just chaos. Like you'd hear gunfire all day long. Our house was surrounded by walls and barbed wire, and a guy that would open the gate and dog and stuff for protection. But they would make roadblocks out of dead bodies. They would burn tires in the streets. They would set cars on fire. Like everywhere you went was like super dangerous. You didn't want to be out, especially at night. And it was just starting to get pretty rough. So we ended up evacuating out of Haiti and came out to California, where I am now. And I've been ever since. But 5 years after we left Haiti, my family moved back, and I went to visit them. So I hadn't been back in the country for 5 years, and I just happened to go there the week before the devastating Haiti earthquake of 2010. And this was a 7.0 earthquake. It lasted 39 seconds long. It killed 300,000 people, left 1 million people homeless, injured another 1 million people. The country's only 7 million people, so like everybody was affected. And I'll get into that story in a sec, because it's pretty intense. But just to share a little bit about me going there, I was in the process of trying to get hired. I was 19, and I thought it'd be cool to go and like volunteer with the United Nations and help out with a new fire program that they had. I'd been an explorer, so I'd been training with the fire department as a kid. I'd done some college fire science classes. I just got my EMT, just got my national registry, and it was kind of like the perfect storm where I could go visit my family. I could visit some friends I hadn't seen in 5 years. I could volunteer. I could help out with the UN and build my resume a little bit in this process of trying to get on. So I went, and I met with the United Nations. We had already been talking, so I knew like I was going to end up helping them no matter what. But there's like formalities to that process too. They kind of have to like make me a temporary employee. I have to go through an interview process. And that interview was scheduled for the day of the earthquake, during the time of the earthquake. And I didn't know it yet, but I get there and I was like, hey, maybe I should try and do my interview early. Like, I don't want to waste my time while I'm here. Like, let's get to work, So I called them the day before, and I was like, hey, do you mind if we do this interview the day early? And they're like, yeah, come on in. So I did my interview. I got my badge, got my photo taken and everything, and got the blessing, right? Had I had been in that building during the time of the earthquake, I probably most likely would have died. Everybody died in that building the next day. There's 300 people that died. That building completely collapsed. So that was like first miracle. Where I didn't think about this till later, but I was at an orphanage during the time of the earthquake, and I was not with my family, but I was helping out. Some friends of ours owned an orphanage. It was 2 stories, 110 kids. All the special needs kids were on the second floor, and that's where I was when the earthquake hit. And initially, we were down in the city. Haiti's like a mountainous island, so we were not up in the mountain where we could see or have a vantage point. We're just like deep down in the city, like you couldn't really see anything around you other than other buildings. And initially, when the earthquake started, it felt like a Big Mac truck was like barreling down the road. So like a low rumble. And then it started getting louder and more intense. And before long, one of the ladies that owns the orphanage, she used to be a paramedic in the States, and now like older and retired. She yelled earthquake. So she had been exposed to like big earthquakes before, and I think lived in California where we get earthquakes. She yelled earthquake, and I was like, oh shoot. Even me living in California, like I wasn't thinking that direction, you know. And Haiti had never experienced earthquakes before. They're not known for earthquakes.
Oh.
So I was like, oh shoot, okay, earthquake. All right. I'm on the second floor. I'm looking around. It's getting more intense. So I hold on to I'm out on a balcony. I hold on to the guardrail. And after about like 5 or 10 seconds, it was like still going and not fun. Like it was getting like scary where like things were really, really moving. Things were falling off the wall. Chairs were falling over. All the kids are screaming now. And I was like, all right, I gotta find my escape route because I can't help anybody if I die. And that's the firefighter mentality, right? Like we gotta risk first gain. So I saw a pickup truck down below. I'm like, I think I can jump on that pickup truck. If this building starts coming down, you know, I'm gonna jump on the truck. That'll absorb my fall a little bit, and like hopefully I'll survive. There's buildings starting to come down around us. You can see like dust in the air. It's like way more noisy, way more scary. And I'm seeing like cracks come in our wall. And I was like, shoot, this might be it, you know? So as I mentioned earlier, it was 39 seconds, which seemed like an eternity. It seemed like 10 minutes. Like you just kind of go into like slow motion, like all your adrenaline is kicking in, and it's just like you can hear your heart rate beating and stuff. And our building didn't collapse, which was like a miracle in itself. Part of the wall had collapsed that surrounds the house, but none of the kids got hit, and our building did not collapse. So once the shaking stopped, as quick as we could, we started getting all those like special needs kids out because most of them can't walk. And we found like a safety zone where we're away from, if the building were to collapse, hopefully not get hit by the building, hopefully not get hit by the walls. Our space was limited, but we knew aftershocks were going to start coming. And so we had everybody sit. And then once we're sitting, I'm like, oh shoot, like I wonder like how bad that was, you know, like what the impact was, because there's no statistics out yet, or we didn't know the rest of the country, you know, just got leveled, or how many people just died. We didn't know if anybody died. That like you could make that assumption, but there's no, you know, the cell phones went down, so our phones weren't working. Everybody was trying to make phone calls. The tower, like cell phone towers, a lot of those had collapsed, and my family wasn't with me, so I had no contact with them. And this was, I think it was close to 5 p.m. When it happened. So it was like just starting to become nighttime. Before long, it got dark, and eventually my dad showed up because he didn't know where I was, but he had an idea. Like there's a good chance I was at this orphanage, and he shows up by himself in his car, and he's got this look on his face that I'd never seen before. And he's like, Trevor, we need to talk. And he pulls me aside and he's like, hey, I went back to the apartment where your mom and your 2 sisters were, and there's nobody alive at the apartments, and it completely collapsed. It's a 5-story apartment. They're on the bottom floor, hanging off the side of a mountain, and it had pancaked down completely. And so he went and he went looking for them. He knew that they had been there. They had just gotten home from school, and there's no signs of life. So he didn't say they were dead, but he implied it, pretty strongly. And I initially refused to believe, that that could happen to my family. As missionaries, we felt a strong calling by God to like be in that country, and I always trusted, he would keep us safe and stuff. So I didn't want to believe that at all. And it was too late to go back and look that night, because one, it was dark, but it took him like hours to get to me. And at this point, it's like pretty late in the evening. The roads were dirt roads to begin with, but now there's like dead bodies all in the roads. There's walls that, were surrounding the houses. Those walls had like fallen into the road, and it's just really tough to get around. And so I went with him. He said, tonight we're gonna try and stay with the pastor. He lives up in the mountains. It's safer there. And he said he has a satellite phone where we can go and call home, call the States and get people to pray for us and give them an update and stuff. So I get in with him, and we're like slowly driving through all this carnage. And you see parents, by candlelight digging and trying to dig their kids out. And you see same thing with the kids. You see kids trying to dig their parents out. And there's already like piles of bodies that they've been pulling out, and like, all right, they're dead, just leave them, like keep looking. And yeah, I wanted to help. But it's like we had our own priorities. Like we had to take care of ourselves and like kind of regroup and figure out our own game plan. It's also not safe. Prisons broke open right away. People were already looting. There's already, you could hear gunfire already, like people trying to protect themselves from bad people. So it's just total chaos. And we made it up the mountain, and that night it is really hard to sleep. The aftershocks kept hitting, and these were big aftershocks. Like these aftershocks were as big as like some pretty big earthquakes. Like you're getting 5.0 aftershocks that are bringing down compromised buildings. So there's more and more collapses, even much later. So yeah, and it was like there's hundreds of aftershocks. They were very frequent. So every couple minutes you'd feel another one. And yeah, definitely couldn't sleep that night. All I could think about was my family, and hoping they were alive, or maybe one of them survived, or just trying to like process my thoughts with that. And I did my best to like stay hopeful and believe that all of them were alive. And the next morning, as soon as it started to become light early in the morning, I was up, and I was like, come on, Dad, let's go find them. And my dad's like a very like wise person, like very reasonable. And he's like, no, Trevor, we need our strength. We need to eat. And like we'll talk about what we're gonna do today. And I was like, okay. So we're sitting at the table eating, and I'm like trying to force down food, but I wasn't hungry. I just wanted to go help. And he starts talking about funeral plans for the family. And I was just like, oh man, that's when it really hit me hard. Like he really believes they're dead. And I had to like excuse myself from the table. I got up. We're up in the mountains now at the pastor's house, and I walk over to the outside balcony. I go outside, just kind of catch my breath and get some air and deal with my emotions. And it's the first time I had seen Haiti in the daylight since the earthquake hit, and especially from that vantage point, like up in the mountains. And I'm looking, and like I couldn't believe my eyes. Like there was just fire everywhere. Like the earthquake created a bunch of fires, so there's smoke headers still. Like there's a haze in the air still from all the rubble and debris. and the sun is just starting to come up, and it's like piercing through all this smoke, all the way down to the ocean from up where we were in the mountains. And on top of that, you can hear just like the entire country crying, like wailing. You hear people just screaming and like singing, but like, the type of singing people do to like comfort themselves, when they don't know what else to do. It was like that. And that's when I started to cry. I was like, holy cow. That's when it really hit me. That was like a very vivid image in my mind that I'll never forget, seeing that for the first time and kind of coming, like seeing the reality of it all. Like, where before I was just trying to like convince myself like, no, we're gonna be okay. And then seeing all that, you're just like, oh, this is not good. And still no statistics on like the devastation, but my dad being the director of World Vision in Haiti, he was the first point of contact that the United States had with Haiti. And CNN's the guy's name was Wolf Blitzer at the time, famous reporter. CNN called my dad on air right after the earthquake happened. I don't know how they got in contact with him, but my dad was like, yeah, it's bad. I don't know any other details. Like, I got to go find my family. Bye, But yeah, so from there, we made a list of like what we needed for the day, like water, shovels, gloves, body bags, not for us, for other people we'd find. And started making our way down the mountain to go dig out my family or, go find them wherever they were. And we're driving down the mountain. The pastor, it's his car. He's driving. And my dad's in the passenger front seat. I'm in the back seat, and I'm like holding hands with my dad, and we're praying and just trying to prepare ourselves for what we're going to see that day. And you can see like people, they don't know what to do. There's people coming up the mountain covered in like debris and like injured and like carrying like a couple clothes. And then there's people walking down the mountain, same scenario, but like with their suitcase and stuff, and they don't know where to go. And like everybody has pretty much lost their home. A lot of them have lost family members. A lot of them are injured. And like, I don't look the same way a Haitian does. Like, there's a different demographic there. But in that moment, like, we were kind of making eye contact with each other, and we'd all experienced the same tragedy, and it felt like we were all connected, and we were all brothers and sisters in the same going through the same thing, right? So it was tough. It was really, really heavy. We eventually made it down the mountain, and we stopped at my dad's office, the World Vision headquarters, and we were going to collect the supplies from the list that we made. And so we pulled in the front gate. We get out. We start trying to grab stuff, tarps and water and stuff. And we start hearing a commotion. We start hearing yelling. And my mom and one sister come in the back gate, like limping, holding each other, covered in debris, kind of beat up. And my mom was like close to 50, I want to say, at the time. And then I had a 14-year-old sister and a 7-year-old sister. And I didn't see the youngest one. But like, we were like all ran over, and they were alive, and we held each other and stuff. And I was like, oh man, maybe the youngest one didn't make it. And somebody else was holding her because she couldn't see. She had debris that got in her eyes and stuff. And they brought her over, and she was alive too. And like, yeah, we all just held each other and cried. And it was like the strongest emotion like I've ever felt, going from losing them or hoping they weren't lost, but feeling it, to getting them back and getting a second chance. And yeah, it was just a beautiful thing. So you can respond to that if you want, or I can
Yeah,
continue.
so listen to your story, man. Like, you were 19, right, when all that happened?
Mhm.
It's like, from the moment the earthquake happened, obviously your firefighting or just, being a first responder skills kind of like jumped in. You're looking at escape routes and things like that. And you're already working at an orphanage. You already know that you have to take care of people. So you immediately went into work mode. I don't know if that was a distracting sense for you to not necessarily worry about everything else that was going on. You were just kind of like caught in the moment with that.
Yeah, it was probably a good distraction. Um, you can't let your emotions get the best of you, as you know, as a firefighter. You have a task to complete, and you do what you were trained to do. And you can think about it and process it later. So if I was caught up with like, oh, I hope my family's okay, and like I was
Yeah.
in the back of my head, but at the same time I was like, there's so much to be done here. The thing I had to fight the most was I wanted to go outside the gates when the earthquake first hit instead of stay with the kids, because I knew like there's probably people trapped. There's probably people like that might be savable, like in the first couple minutes, that are getting crushed by a rock or something. Um, but I had to force myself to like stay with the kids and help out, because there was such a big need to, like 110 like freaking out kids. Um, on top of me just like going out on my own all a rogue and like trying to be a hero or something, and I'll
Yeah.
get sucked into that real quick, and then
That
nobody will
that
be able to
also
find me.
intrigues me too, because I know eventually you do that. You go into rogue mode kind of, but do you think, like with your time in Africa as very young and dealing with people that are going through a civil war, that you just became someone that like goes out and worries about helping other people over your own well-being? Or is that
Um,
just something like innate characteristic
I
that you have?
yeah, I think it's just kind of it became second nature to me, as always helping, right? Um, so before I knew I wanted to be a firefighter, I didn't start going down that route till I had um moved to California, and I was like starting to think about what I wanted to do with my life. But it came so naturally because my whole life growing up, I was a missionary, and I was like, we were helping people as much as we could, and like giving the shirt off our backs, and giving people our food, and um yeah, it's just um there's not much of a question, in my opinion, and in my experience, when I see somebody in need, like I gotta help them.
Yeah, and then the last thing that I'll talk about, and this just listen to this part of the story, is that I don't know if it would just be like hope or ignorance as 19 years old, or you just had you knew that your family was okay. You know, I mean, do you think back on that, or like you were like, I'm not talking about funerals right now because I don't need to. Like, I know for some reason, I feel it that they're still alive.
Um, so I was forcing myself to believe that. I'd already seen a lot of dead bodies, and I saw like how bad it, like every house we passed had damage, and like there was just bodies everywhere. And it was one of those things, like I could not accept it yet. Like there's just no way that I was gonna be able to carry on if I accepted that. Like that's just too devastating. Like that's too much to handle. Um, with everything else that's going on. So part of it was like a defense mechanism. Like, no, they can't be dead. Like, I'm not gonna accept that. Um, but at the same time, and this is from like a faith perspective, as a Christian, and believing that God was gonna protect my family. Well, what happens if they weren't alive anymore? Like, what does that do to my faith? It kind of, it rocks it for sure. So um I don't want to have to deal with that either. Like there's just so much going on that I'm like, all right, for now they're alive, and until proven otherwise. Like that's what I have to believe.
Very nice. So once your family is united, your youngest sister, right, has some visual issues that need, so family's banged up. They need to get taken care of. So what happens from that point on?
Yeah. So we're all together at the World Vision office. Next order of business is getting them medical help. Um, my mom, it seemed like she broke her leg and her arm. She was barefoot. The 14-year-old sister was the only one with shoes on. She was scraped up, but like in the best shape. And then the youngest sister, also barefoot, the 7-year-old, and could not see. Like had like just her eyes were all messed up. It was temporary. It was just like a lot of debris in there and stuff. She can see now, fine. Everybody's fine now. But at that time, we're like, let's go find a doctor. So we load them in the car, start driving around, and we knew a missionary doctor that we were trying to get to. And I think, yeah, it took us like all day because there's like power lines down. There's like just rubble in the roads. There's dangerous people. But we eventually got to this compound where we could get them a little bit of medical attention, nothing crazy, like no x-rays or anything like that. But get them cleaned up, get them some food. And we ended up spending the night there. And we, nobody wanted to go inside because we're all scared of like being inside houses right now because of the earthquake. But we slept out in the grass that night we all shared, all 5 of us, on one little mattress and spent the whole night out there. And then the next day, we got them over to the U.S. Embassy and evacuated out by the Air Force, the U.S. Air Force. And this was kind of interesting experience too, because the U.S. Embassy is like, it's filtering in all these people that like I kind of know, like, oh, I'm seeing people I used to go to school with that I hadn't seen in 5 years. And so like little reunion, but like a terrible situation for the reunion. And then we're seeing people who like we know who like lost people that we know. So that's tragic, right? So that's sad. There's people even from our flight, like flying into Haiti. For me at least, flying into Haiti. I made friends on the plane. They didn't all show up. Some of them did, but like there's like some deaths just from like those people visiting Haiti. That I knew for like a few moments. Who had tragedy. So U.S. Embassy, it's at the airport, but the airport was like shut down. It was damaged. Only like big C-130s were getting in and stuff like that. All commercial airline flights were shut down. So everybody wanted to leave, but nobody could unless you had like some special way of getting out, like with the military. But they prioritized my family. There was like injuries and stuff, and they would have taken all of us. But I was like, Dad, I gotta stay. Like, I gotta help. Like, this is my time to help. Like, I'm trained for this. I'm an EMT. I have fire training. I know the language. Like, I know I have to be here. Like, this is like a calling for me right now. And he's like,
Dude,
you're right.
That baffles me, bro. Like that, you know, you just went through, you know, trying to deny that your family was gone, right? You finally get back together. You're sleeping out in the grass, and it's your chance to go home, and you're like, nah, I'm gonna stay here, man. You know, like you said, this is a calling. This is my opportunity. And the fact that your family let you stay is pretty wild.
Yeah, well, I was surprised too, because like my dad had the same conviction that I did, I guess. Like I told him all that, and he's like, you're right. And he like just gave me the keys to the car, and he was like, we'll be in touch. So like for me, I'm like, my family's in good hands. Like my dad, they're with my dad. They're with the Air Force. They're under the care of the U.S. Embassy. Like they're gonna be okay. So I felt that peace, and then I felt like the intense calling to like go help now. Like now your family's taken care of. Now all these other people in Haiti like need your help, and you're like the guy. Like you're trained in a lot of ways that people that are in Haiti right now are not trained, along with like the local knowledge, and then all these people that have the same training that I have, or at least some of it, are not going to be able to get into Haiti. Like the airports are shut down, and it's super tough. So yeah, all these search and rescue teams are being assembled. Like now everybody knows what Haiti is, where Haiti is, it just experienced the largest natural disaster in modern history. Major, like everybody knows about Haiti at this moment. Everybody wants to go to Haiti to help, but they can't. They just can't. Like it's going to take them a long time to get down there. So I was like, yeah, this is my time to go and help. So I got the keys from my dad. Eventually everybody like ended up leaving the US Embassy, getting on flights, and everybody I knew they weren't letting people bring their luggage or like their bags. They're just like, just what you can fit in your pockets, that's it. Like we're not taking bags. So there's tons of bags at the US Embassy. People were like, here, take whatever you want, take my stuff. So I made myself like a little backpack of like socks and a toothbrush, and like some people gave me like a little bit of money and stuff. So I just like put all that in a bag, and it was again by this point nighttime. So I didn't want to go out. I didn't have a plan yet. I didn't want to go out just exploring at night in Haiti with the car keys. So I slept at the US Embassy on the ground, this time no mattress, that night, and I woke up to somebody trying to steal my bag. And so they got my bag, and I had to run and grab it back from them and take it. And then I put the backpack on backwards on my chest, and like I slept on it for the rest of the night that way. And the next day I get in the car, I make my way over to the World Vision office. I felt like that was a good place to start. Like they knew who my dad was. They kind of know who I am. I know a few of them there. And it's like a relief organization. So they're going to have some stuff that they're trying to do. So I went there, and right away they started treating me like my dad. Like I had all the same knowledge and stuff. And I'm like, no, not at all. I'm like a 19-year-old kid. So they're calling me like Mr. Frank, which is like my dad's name and stuff. And they put me in charge of a food distribution. And World Vision had some food and water that had been coming in and donated and stuff. And so we loaded up some big trucks, drove into the city, and it became like chaos, like absolute chaos. We basically got raided. We started handing out the food, and right away people were jumping in the trucks, taking as much stuff as they could, like pushing us. So I was like, all right, everybody out. And we didn't get all the food out, just what people like stole from us pretty much, and hopped on the trucks and left. Like we couldn't safely distribute it. So we get back to World Vision headquarters. I was like, all right, new plan. Let's do this in like a big soccer field. We'll bring security with us. We'll have a secured exit where like nobody can block us. We can leave if we need to. A secured entrance where like people come in to get their food, and we'll try that. So we tried that. It worked a little bit longer, but we got overwhelmed again, and we had to like just evacuate, escape fast. Like it was sketchy. Very dangerous.
It's amazing. Like, cause nobody in the United States can probably understand that maybe Katrina with like major catastrophe, like on what people will do to survive for, there's probably people starving, no water, fresh water, right? Yeah. And you're like one of the only resources out there. And you think everybody's going to kumbaya and line up, like they're walking into Costco, but that's definitely not the case.
No, you enter a survival mode, which a lot of Americans have never even been in. And it's like, you will kill for like a piece of bread, or, your body's just like all the normal rules are out the window, and you're doing whatever you can to survive, even if that means like killing to survive. Like you just turn into like an animal. Like that could happen to anybody. That's not like any specific type of people or anything like that. That's like human nature.
Human nature.
Yeah, once we lose our basic needs, you just turn into like an animal. And so yeah, that's what we're dealing with, and it didn't work. So we had to go back, and we go back to the World Vision again, and by this time a small search and rescue team had shown up to World Vision, and I asked if I could be part of their team. I'm like, this might be a better job for me. Like, I can help them, kind of guide them around Haiti a little bit, maybe be a translator a little bit, and just see where that goes. I felt like that would be better. I didn't like the food distribution stuff.
Yeah. And you're not running it at that point. You're just an asset.
Right. I'm just a team member. So they had, let me see if I can name off all the types of people they had in their group. It was small. It was like maybe like 7 people, but they had an Army Ranger, they had a paramedic, they had a cadaver dog handler, they had a pilot, they had a security dude, and then the leader, his name is Russell Keats, I believe, and he found the American flag that is on the postage stamps from like the 9/11 carnage. So that's like one of the things he's famous for, but he's also like a military contractor, and like he was running the search and rescue team. And then there was me, who like was there for the earthquake and knew the language a little bit and knew the country a little bit and just wanted to help. So we went around and tried to do search and rescue. By this point, it's like day 4 or 5 maybe, and so there's still survivors. There's still people buried who are alive, but now it's getting harder to find them because it's not like they're yelling anymore. Or, they're just like, if they're alive, they're like not doing much. And like, where do you start with that? Like, there's thousands of collapsed houses and stuff, and the easy grabs, they're already extricated. So we kind of just had to go like word of mouth, where family members knew somebody was buried. They've been trying to dig, and they find us, and like we're like, all right, cool, let's see if we can help you. So that's what we did, and it wasn't very successful. We were pulling body parts out, but like we didn't have any survivors. So that part wasn't discouraging. The hard part with that was like seeing like the family members who were just like processing their buried loved one, coming to terms with the fact that like we weren't being able to save them, coming to terms with the fact that like they're dead,
Well, they might have been experiencing the same thing you were with your own family, right? Like, yeah, I don't know where they're at, but I don't visually see them like expired or underneath all this rubble. So I'm not going to believe it until I see it.
Right. So yeah, seeing that hope kind of get extinguished was hard with those families, I would say. So did that for a little bit, and then that team had to leave. And by this point, we'd been to the airport a lot because we had the pilot with us, and he was doing like little evacuation trips for certain families. So I'd made friends with some people at the airport, and the airport was like, it was like a base camp for like every military organization, every country that came in to render aid. There were some giant MASH hospital tents, like circus tents, that they'd set up to like start doing medical work, doing surgeries and stuff. And I saw this group of like helicopter pilots, and I was like, okay, maybe this seems cool. Like maybe I'll go talk to them. And they had 3 helicopters and a bunch of like food and stuff that they were trying to distribute. So I pitched myself to them. Same thing. I was like, hey, I was here during the earthquake. I want to help. And they're like, you can help. And they were like independently wealthy people that civilians that like flew down their helicopters from Utah and wanted to help out. And
so it was like a Pineapple Express kind of thing, right? Like they did in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, and that was cool for its own reasons. Like you're just like, it's kind of lawless, and we would steal food from the airport that wasn't getting distributed. It was just sitting there because nobody wanted to distribute it. It was too dangerous, like I shared before. And we'd load up the helicopters all day long, and we'd go and drop food. And at first we were like landing the helicopters and like trying to unload the food, and it was same thing. It was getting ransacked, and people were jumping in the helicopters. Became super dangerous. At one point, I like to share this story because it was like a highlight of my helicopter work. But we were jumping out with these 50-pound bags of beans with like Rambo knives, cutting them open, shaking them, and so it kind of slowed the people down where they had to like pick it up. And but there was a point where we did that. We landed. There's nobody around, and we landed. Hundreds of people came out of the woodworks for like cutting open these beans, and the helicopter starts taking off without us because they're seeing like it's too dangerous. So I had to run and jump in the helicopter as it was off the ground with the Rambo knife as it took off, and we're like kicking people that are trying to hang on to it and stuff. And I'm like, that was definitely like a movie.
Yeah, dude.
That was
That's
cool.
gnarly.
It was scary, but that was cool. Like, so there's like, yeah, there are situations like that we were running into, and eventually we just started hovering. I don't know why we didn't think of this in the first place, but hovering, throwing out all the food. Sometimes we'd hover over rivers, throw like canned goods in the river, and it would just disperse, and people would be in the rivers like picking stuff up. So that was cool, and they were well connected. They'd hire security. We'd fly to the Dominican at night. They had rented out a baseball field. They'd land on the baseball field, hired Dominican security and stuff to like just make our perimeter, keep us safe. And we did that for about a week before they were done and they were ready to go home. So from there, back and forth airport this entire week, I kind of made my next where I wanted to go and try and help out at, and that was at the hospitals. So these circus tent hospitals, there's 3 giant ones, and there was people getting dragged in there all day long that were getting pulled out of rubble with like missing limbs. They needed surgery or they needed amputations. On top of that, as I mentioned earlier, like the prisons broke open, so there's really bad people. It's hard to go to jail in Haiti. Like you got to be pretty bad to end up in jail in Haiti. And the jails broke open. Those people were loose, just doing whatever they wanted. And so we're getting like gunshot wounds like coming in too. And on top of that, just the normal, like this guy fell off his motorcycle, this guy got hit by a car, and there's a lot of work to be done in the hospital. So I got there. It was ran by the University of Miami. So there's like American standards being practiced. And they asked me for my national registry card. And I was like, you know what? I just got that. But I had lost everything in the earthquake, like my wallet included. I went back to the apartment collapse just to see what I could salvage and like take a photo and see like the devastation and stuff. And it had already been looted. Like our apartment had already been gone through. And there's like a little crawl space that like you could kind of get in there a little bit and like pull some stuff out. But somebody had already been deep in our apartment, found my wallet, and like gone through it. But they didn't want the national registry card. So that was still there. And I was like, it was all beat up and stuff because it got hit by rocks. But I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna keep that. So I actually had that. And I like showed it to them and they looked me up. They're like, all right, yeah, you're in the system. Like, cool, go for it. But it wasn't like I was an EMT at that point. I was like starting IVs, pushing drugs, assisting with surgeries. Like I wasn't like malpracticing. I was just like, I was doing what they were telling me to do, but I was doing way more than my scope would allow in the States, So got tons of experience I'd never get to do in America. And that was just like nonstop around the clock. You'd work until you couldn't work anymore. There's like cots set up, so you can go take a nap, eat an MRE, and right back at it. And yeah, I was just like,
yeah, there's no union mandated breaks out there.
No. And you can get burnt out really quick because it's like, it seems like every 10 minutes there's like commotion and they're dragging in another dude who's like bleeding everywhere and like barely alive, and it's just like a traumatic scene like all day long. Like there's just like so much like bad excitement that like you have to tell yourself to go rest. Like otherwise you'll just never stop. There's so much work to be done. So I after about a week there, I had like the most seniority because people would come for a few days, get burnt out, leave. And I ended up being in charge of orthopedic. What's it called when it's like after post-op? I think
Oh yeah,
post-op.
post-op. After
Orthopedic tent.
after surgery from orthopedic surgery.
Yeah. So I had this
Yeah.
whole tent to myself where I was like, these are my patients. Like we're taking care of them, making sure, every stuff's getting swapped out and cleaned, and they're getting food and stuff. And I was like, all right, it's probably time for me to go too. Like I don't need to be the senior guy here as a new EMT. So I moved along and I found my next thing, and that was rubble removal. So I found a crew that was going around and removing rubble for villages where like their well got covered, so they don't have access to water anymore. So we go and spend all day like digging out their well again and get them clean water. So that was the last thing I did before I was like, okay, it's time for me to go home. Like I need to figure out how to get home. I've barely talked to my family or anybody. I've just been like nonstop working for the last month. And people were telling me like nobody's leaving Haiti. Like the airport's still shut down. Like there's no commercial flights. There's been people waiting since the earthquake to leave. Like good luck trying to get out of there, And I was like, okay, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna go to the airport and see what happens. And I didn't have my passport. I didn't have money. But I was just gonna like kind of trust God to get me home pretty much. Like he got me there, you can get me out. So I show up to the airport. I walk through security. Nobody stops me. I keep walking, no ticket, keep walking, get out to the tarmac. There's people set up on the tarmac with like tents and their luggage, and they've been out there a long time. And I'm kind of looking around like, all right, what am I going to do now? Somebody runs over to me. They're like, hey, we got one more seat on our private charter. We thought we'd ask you, do you want to go? And I was like, yep, that's why I'm here. So within like 30 minutes, I was on an airplane to the Bahamas without any money or passport or anything.
That's wild.
And in Bahamas, refueled, and then flew to Florida. And get to Florida, there's customs. Like you have to prove, kind of who you are and stuff. And passport's pretty important for that. And I let everybody go ahead of me. I'm trying to figure out what to do. And so I was like last in line. And when they got to me, I just kind of walked. I just kept walking. Like I kept my head down and kept walking. Nobody stopped me. So I'm like, okay, I'm back in. No phone, no money. My family doesn't even know I'm here. So it's getting to be late. Asked to borrow a cell phone. I called my dad. I was like, hey, I made it back. And he's like, okay, I'll get you a ticket to I don't think I ever went. I think he just sent me like back to California, because they went to Connecticut. That's where they live, or that's where they were now living. So he's like, okay, yeah, you have to be at this airport by tomorrow morning. I hopped in one of those free shuttles, and I'm like, I just got in because it was starting to rain. It was getting late, and I'm like, I hope I'm going the right direction. And that shuttle ended up going close to that airport I needed to be at. And I made friends on that shuttle, and those people let me sleep on their floor in their hotel. The next morning, continental breakfast, free meal, free shuttle to the airport, get to the airport, somehow get my tickets. I think I had to like kind of talk my way through a lot of stuff. Like, hey, I just got back from Haiti, like that sort of thing, like special circumstances, no ID. I got my ticket though, like I'm just going home, and yeah, nobody stopped me. So that's how I got home. So pretty crazy, like even that part of the story of getting home. But yeah, that's my Haiti story.
Dude, I listened to that story, and then you working in West Hollywood. I think you're selling yourself short. You need to go knock on some doors in Hollywood and be like, hey man, this is my story. We could probably make a movie out of this. And then just see where that goes. I don't know. It's a crazy story, man. I mean, not to take any of the seriousness away from it. I mean, it's amazing to think about all the little wins and how everything was just guiding you in this direction, right? And then you're a person of faith, and you'd like to Thank you. I mean, God was guiding you in the right path. Just the fact that you went there to visit your family right before the earthquake, he put you in that place for you to serve. And
Not a
I know
coincidence.
you know that, but I'm just saying for anybody that's listening, man, it's an amazing story, and it's cool that you were there to make that impact,
Yeah,
and your family was able to, you still have your family to this day. It's
yeah.
pretty compelling story.
I thank God for them every day, and I know that you know we didn't ask for this. We're a victim of circumstance, but try and make lemonade out of lemons, and try and make the most out of every situation. And life has a lot of hardships, and you can really let those things get you down if you let it. But um, I try and always look for like the good in bad situations, and we kind of have to do that as firefighters too.
Yeah, that was one thing that we talked about before we started recording on touching on a little bit, right? Is the building resiliency, and um, obviously your upbringing, everything that you encountered as a kid, as a teenager, everything with Haiti and in LA County, it's kind of hardened you a little bit. I don't want to say desensitized you, but it's made you more capable of dealing with hard times than, say, someone that, you know, grew up in a small town and never really experienced a ton of hardship.
Yeah. Um, I think I don't know. Yeah, it just comes with the territory a little bit. Um, you have to process everything that you do and see. And processing that in a good way is going to keep you alive, right? If we end up having too much trauma and we can't mentally like handle it, that's when you see like the mental health issues, and we lose a lot of people in the fire service, first responder community to um, people who can't handle life anymore, right? And they look for an exit. So for me, being able to share my story like I am right now is therapeutic um, for me. Here I am 14 years later, still sharing this experience, and I've been on quite a few podcasts, and I started a nonprofit um, called Firm Foundation, FIRME Foundation, after Haiti, to give back, and it's to build houses for earthquake survivors. So since leaving Haiti, we've been back a ton of times. We've built 39 houses for earthquake survivors, and that's been super rewarding for me to be able to like give back in that way, because I got a second chance. My family got a second chance. Um, I still feel called to help the people of Haiti. So making a nonprofit organization, that was like a big learning curve for me as a 19-year-old. Um, and it kind of helped me now. I own a business, or I own multiple businesses at this point, and you kind of learn those skills along the way. But the thing with a nonprofit is you really have to promote it. Like, you got to get people to believe in you and your story, and what you're doing is good and justified. So I was sharing my story at churches and at schools and at events, and I was throwing these big fundraising events, and I've never been a good public speaker. Um, After talking thousands of times, I'm starting to get a little bit better, but I mumble a lot. I don't enunciate. I have a weird accent from living in all these different countries. And so I'm not really comfortable up in front of people and talking. And but I had to force myself to do it. And, it paid off with the nonprofit. It was very successful, and we've helped a lot of people, and um, continue. We want to continue helping people in that way. Um, but to go back to the resiliency, just um, being able to process and share my story in this way has helped me deal with some really traumatic um, events in my life, where I saw thousands of brutally killed dead bodies, and I've seen people even before the earthquake, some really brutal stuff like beheadings and shootings and all the bad stuff that you can imagine. Like, I got to experience a lot of that, even stuff you can't imagine. I got to experience a lot of that too as a young teenager. Um, so everybody's different. I think moral of the story is look for positive ways to deal with the stress in your life. There's definitely a lot of negative ways to deal with that stress, and as first responders, like we see a lot of that, like with the substance abuse and just going down like dark paths, where there's better ways. Get involved with other people who are experiencing or experience the same thing that you did, and talk about it. Go to therapy if you want. I know therapy is like a taboo thing, but I think more and more it's becoming more and more prevalent that it's helpful. I don't think anybody's ever denied like, oh yeah, therapy made me worse. Like nobody says that. It's more just like people don't want to go because they're embarrassed. Like we want to handle tough situations on our own, and we have a lot of pride and arrogance sometimes, but sometimes you gotta fold to that, and for the longevity of yourself and your family, like go get help if you need it, or talk to a brother or sister that might be able to steer you the right direction. But if you think you're dealing with something, just talk to somebody. Like it's really important. And as you mentioned, uh we're in mental health awareness month, right? So
Yeah.
even more, like take a second look in the mirror, reevaluate yourself, go through your checks, and make sure you're good, because I've lost too many people to mental health issues. Just stuff.
Yeah, I can tell you're someone that, the best medicine for you is to continue to serve others, whatever capacity it is. I think a lot of people that struggle kind of lose their purpose. There's people in my department or people that I've met in the first responder community that signed up because they wanted to help people, right? And then, monotonous calls or whatever kind of overwhelms them, and or the job isn't exactly what they thought it was going to be, and they lose their purpose along the way, and then it's more like mental torture just going into work. And like you were saying, it's like we're told to not complain or anything like that, and for some people, it may sound like complaining, but it also could be a cry for help from somebody that's just burned out, like you said before, people that are burned out or just dealing with stuff. I think therapy is actually doing better than what it used to be also, especially with, obviously 9/11, but then the war in Iraq and Afghanistan and all the veterans coming home. I think the biggest complaint for firefighters is that when we were going to see therapy, we were sitting in rooms with people with this big education, but no perspective on the things that we see and do. But I've encountered some groups personally that, it's made up of first responders and veterans and things like that, where they know exactly where you're coming from with that. And I'd like to see it get bigger and stronger and the stigma go away. There's a lot of people on social media fighting that stigma. And hopefully we can reduce those mental health numbers in the first responder community at least.
Yeah.
So
I think we can kind of we can mask it a little bit for the tough guys who don't want to go, and like incentivize it in some way. Like for the structure of how we were paid is we have an optional 3% bonus that we get if we go get like our yearly checkup and like take a couple classes regarding our health. And there's like a couple of things you have to do every year to like maintain this bonus, and 99% of the guys do it. There's a few that are like not healthy enough to probably like do it, and they're in a bad spot as it is. But if there's a way to like, hey, this is part of your bonus now, like you get to go for one session, and if you like it, you can go for more, but you got to do at least one. I think that would be a cool way to just make sure guys are doing it, and then they can be tough about it and be like, oh yeah, I had to because of the, it's part of the bonus or whatever. So
yeah, man.
they have an excuse at least.
Are you continuing to go around and talk? And I know you don't like doing it, but are you still like going on the public speaking tours or anything like that?
I haven't pushed the fundraising in that way in a while. Haiti's become more and more dangerous over the years to where it's not safe for me to even go and build right now. So we still like, collect money and stuff like that. And we're kind of waiting for the right moment to go back down and build again. So yeah, no, I haven't done like big events or big speaking events in a while. For right now, this is kind of as far as it goes. There's even guys at my station who like don't know my story because I don't push it on anybody, and like it's got to be organic and sincere. Like if I'm gonna take the time to kind of share, I mean, we're going on over an hour and a half right now, and it's like we could have barely skimmed the surface. Like it gets a lot deeper if we want it to be. So, it's funny when somebody finds out like this story or something. I have a couple stories, but this one, and they're like, dude, I worked with you for like 5 years. I didn't know that. So I'm not always out there just like on my soapbox, just like talking about this stuff. But when the opportunity presents and I think it's valuable and people care, then absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I thank you for coming on and sharing your story. I know you said it's therapeutic for yourself, but I think it's an important message. I mean, me just listening to it, it makes me want to do more. I mean, I'm sure you heard of Team Rubicon. They're a nonprofit organization. They're started up by veterans. They actually got their start by going to Haiti as well. And I started doing a lot of stuff with them, but then the deeper I got into the fire service, I've not done a lot. But now just listening to your story, man, I just like, man, I wonder what they're doing. I wonder if I can get involved in. So it's motivating me to do more. So continue telling your story, man. And hopefully the people that are listening, resonate with it and want to do more, obviously. Or they actually, if they're first responders, they actually are like, okay, this is why I do it, to help people. It's obviously not at that scale, but he's one of us. I can resonate. It's awesome.
Thank you.
So,
yeah, I'm glad it's nice to hear when I don't try and inspire people, but it's like nice to hear that it's a positive response hearing my story. And yeah, you just you got to know your why. Like, why are you helping? Why are you doing what you're doing? And stay motivated and have a reason for it.
Yeah, beautiful, man. We'll wrap it at that. Before we cut it, though, how can people reach out to you or get a hold of you, or what's your website?
So the Williams Key, I'm always like super happy to talk with people about the locks, the doors. If you have a problem, if you have a question, send me photos, videos. I can help you talk you through a door. Or if you just want to talk shop, I love doing that too. We sold to all 50 states in about 30 different countries, and it's so cool hearing the stories from all around the world. People who were able to get in quick and save a life or prevent somebody from jumping or whatever it may be. Reach out to me. Williamskey.com is the website. We're about to launch our new website. This will be our third launch. So stay tuned for that. You can reach me at anything that ends in williamskey.com. So Trevor at williamskey.com, info at williamskey.com, whatever you want to put in there, it'll get to me. Or the old email address, which I'll still get, is thewilliamskey@gmail.com. So yeah, easy ways to reach out there. Or you can just DM me. We have 2 Instagram accounts. If you look for Williams Key stuff, you'll find them. So yeah, there's that. And then the nonprofit is firmfoundation.org, and that's FIRME, like firme. So firmfoundation.org.
Can people make donations through that website?
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. So you guys heard it. If you want to support Trevor and the NGO, go to the website, show some support. Or like you were saying, with the Williams Key, they make good firefighter gifts, probie gifts, and all that. So, absolutely. So we'll wrap it there. Trevor, once again, thank you so much. If you listen to this, make sure to share the show. Make sure to get Trevor's story out there and support the show as well. We don't have sponsors or anything like that, so we're relying on you. And thank you for listening. All right, everybody. Catch you next time.